This is episode number 5 of the LPSD Virtual College and Career Fair, and today it is our pleasure to speak with a really good friend of mine. I know I've said this pretty much on every episode, but we're meeting with Michael Brady. Been friends since first grade. He is a design engineer who works for Boeing, the airplane company, and but he is a defense contractor. He works on site at Hill Air Force Base in Utah, supporting the United States Air Force as a defense contractor. He's a civilian, but he has many years working as a mechanical engineer or design engineer, and he's going to give us a little insight on what it takes to get to where he's at, different avenues of getting there. Some classes definitely think about, and also some, not in particular specific programs, but different, like I said, different ways of getting to be where he is at. So let's get right into Michael Brady, defense contractor for Boeing.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. This is a cool opportunity. I love sharing what I do and talking to people about engineering and anything science and technology, engineering and math, STEM related. I love it all, so happy to talk to you today. I'll give you a quick introduction on me, kind of my background, who I am, what I do. So I was born and raised on a small family farm. We grew up together, so you know that, Tim. So had some older brothers, worked on the farm a lot with my dad, and that's kind of when I started getting interested in mechanical engineering, working on farm equipment and doing stuff with my hands. My dad would always curse at the engineers that designed the farm equipment because it was so hard to fix. So I thought, hey, that might be a good job to try and do, fix things and do things better. So then I graduated high school from Marsh Valley High School and started going to college at Brigham Young University, Idaho. It took me a while to decide to do mechanical engineering, but that's what I ended up studying. I did a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering at BYU, Idaho. I kind of debated a little bit back and forth if I wanted to do construction management or a welding type degree, but I ended up doing engineering. A lot of people kind of get nervous or afraid of the math associated with engineering because I've never been that great at math. I'll say that. But I do a lot of it. I did a lot of it for my degrees, and I'll just say, don't be afraid of it. So I'm in I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at BYU, Idaho, and then did an internship for a company in Idaho called Spudnik Equipment. And they design and build agriculture equipment for potatoes. Every type of equipment you can imagine for potatoes. Internship for them, and then finished my degree and went to work after my bachelor's degree for them as well. I was a design engineer for them. I also did a lot of hands-on wire harness fabrication. I also went out into the farmers' fields a lot with them, getting to know farm equipment and the farmers, what they actually wanted from engineers in the designs of equipment. So that was cool. And that kind of led, all growing up and all through schooling, I've always loved aerospace, so airplanes and rockets. So I started looking at the Boeing company, put in a lot of applications and got offered a job interview and a job to work for the Boeing company in Seattle, Washington. I'd never been to Seattle, but I knew I wanted to do this engineering job for Boeing. And so I picked up and moved from Idaho to Seattle, Washington, and started working for the Boeing company as a design engineer. So my specific jobs were designing equipment installations for 737s. So antennas, sensors, all different types of equipment, racks and panels inside 737s. So that was a lot of fun. I loved that job. And while I was there, Boeing helped me pay for a master's degree that I did at the University of Washington, also studying mechanical engineering. where I focused on composites and autonomous aircraft, so UAVs or drones. So I was able to finish a master's degree, Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Washington. And about the time I finished that, I took a new job with Boeing here in Utah, where I'm at now, working at Hill Air Force Base, still as a design engineer. And I support the United States Air Force as a defense contractor and working for Boeing. And so that's been a fun transition. I get to try new things, learn new things. Still all within my realm of engineering as a mechanical engineer. And I just love designing things, working in aerospace, and taking things from a thought to something that you actually build and make, and in this case fly. So
Well, definitely, you've had quite the experience these last, what was it, 13 years of, college, grad school, and, a couple different moves. What, so you talked about like mechanical engineering, being able to work on, things to be able to fix or create or do type of that. I know there are some different fields of engineering. Can you just give us a general overview of, maybe those, what all encompasses the engineering field?
Yeah, great question. So engineering is very, very broad. I will say that right now. Some of the more specific fields of engineering are mechanical engineering, like I studied, but there's also electrical engineering, which is extremely in demand in the world today. Electrical engineers are very needed. And there's also computer engineering. It's very similar to electrical engineering, but a little bit different, more focused on the actual computer side of electrical engineering. And electrical would be a little bit more broadly applied to anything electrical. There's also civil engineering. So that's the engineers who design bridges, roads, infrastructure, like buildings. So that's civil. And there's also aerospace engineering is a more specific type of engineering dealing with aerospace. So anything airplane or rocket or space related would be aerospace engineering. And I'll say there's a lot of things in common that go across all the different engineering disciplines. And as you kind of choose a more specific one, you study different skills that you'll need in your future career as an engineer. So I'll say mechanical and electrical are probably the most broad fields of engineering. As you start to study other fields, you get a little bit more specific in what you would potentially go to work doing. Even as a mechanical engineer, I studied mechanical engineering, but I work with electrical engineers every day, and I do a lot of electrical engineering, designing wiring and wire harnesses, specifically in my day-to-day work. Even though I studied mechanical engineering, a lot of my skills combined with my experience in the workforce has kind of brought me to a more specific path, doing wiring designs and wiring harnesses, even though I studied mechanical engineering. And I'll say that same thing kind of applies to electrical engineering and all the engineering fields really. You might study one aspect of engineering, and then as you get kind of experience and you kind of decide what you like to do, you can start to get a little bit more specialized and focused on different aspects of engineering.
And when, like, if you're going to college, I guess my question is, with all these different fields of engineering, is there a time where you have to like declare I'm doing mechanical engineering, or do you take a lot of the same classes and then maybe your junior, senior year, that's when you start going in one direction?
So my advice to anyone I talk to about this is the sooner you decide, the better, but don't rush yourself. So And what I mean by that is a lot of the classes, like the math classes, those are going to be common across all the different engineering disciplines. So don't worry about that. You can take all the math you want and it'll apply to any specific engineering degree. But if you're kind of waffling between, aerospace engineering or civil engineering or mechanical or electrical or computer, I always advise people to think about the job you may want to have, or think about the specific thing you might want to work on, and then, or go talk to someone that's doing a job that you might want and see what they studied. Because I think a lot of people get distracted thinking about what they should be studying, like what degree they should study in college, and they kind of forget to think about, what do I actually want to be doing when I have a degree. And so that's kind of always my advice to people interested in STEM or in engineering, is talk to them more about, what do you want to actually do? What kind of work do you want to do? What do you want to work on? And then from there, you talk to people who do that and then decide on the degree that's going to help you get there.
Yeah, I think that's
But I'll
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to answer your question more specifically, I'd say if you know what you want to do, declare your major your very first day on campus and start getting to work. If you aren't quite sure, take a few semesters to figure it out. It's totally okay.
Yeah. And I think what you said is that question of what do you actually want to do? I think that applies to, obviously not just engineering, but, to kind of everyone, to anyone looking post, I mean, whether or not college or not, exactly what do you want to do? And that'll help, shape you. Because I know for me, I went an unconventional path to get where I am right now. But obviously the things I did going into broadcasting or communications has helped me in what I'm doing right now. So yeah, those are definitely great advice with that, and kind of bringing it back to do you need a master's degree to be a successful engineer?
No, not at all. I actually know a lot of engineers that are quite successful and very intelligent and sharp and do an excellent job, who have a bachelor's degree. And I'll even say I know a lot of people that I've worked with that contribute as engineers that only have technical degrees, such as an associate's degree in a technical field combined with a lot of technical experience. That's a little bit of a harder path, I'll say, because it takes more time. You have to get more job experience. But I'd say that is also possible. It's not always just about how high of a degree you have, because I do know several people who have come more of a technical route. Like they might have gone to a community college out of high school, or a technical college, and they might have studied more of a vocational skill, that they're contributing to our engineering projects at a very high level. So,
And kind of going back to math, 'cause whenever I think of engineers, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And knowing you when you're going to college and seeing the math you had to do, I only had to take one math class, and I actually had to take it twice to get a little bit better grade.
yeah.
But just seeing, the level of math, is it, well, I'm sure it's possible, but what what level of math do you think a student might need to be at going into college, into like engineering field?
Yeah. So I would say a high school student's goal for math, if they're interested in science and technology, um, they should be pushing themselves to try and learn algebra and advanced algebra, and even probably pre-calculus while in high school. And I know a lot of high schools actually go as far as calculus, and do a good job at teaching that. but I will say most engineering programs around the country um, start with calculus. So when you get into college and you start an engineering degree, the very first math class you're going to be asked to take is calculus. So I think as a high school student, you want to make sure you have a solid foundation in algebra and advanced algebra and pre-calculus, so that you're prepared for those calculus classes in college. So,
Great.
and I'll say a little bit more about the math. Like I said, I never felt like I was great at it. I always felt like I was one of the slower people in the math class, but that's not the important part. The important part is that you learn it. And every university, the two universities I've attended, both had phenomenal resources to help you learn the math, no matter how fast you were at it or slow you were at it. I took advantage of tutors. I often sat down and worked with tutors to get the extra time to learn the math. But I did learn it, and I'm grateful I did. It was a challenge at times, but I learned it, and I know anybody who wants to can.
So besides math classes, what are like some of the classes specific for engineering that you had to take?
Yeah, so some of the coolest classes I remember as a freshman even, and these are kind of introductory classes that helped me decide if I wanted to do mechanical engineering or not. One was a shop class. So we worked on lathes, so machining metal, and then end mill machines to mill metal. And that was an awesome class. I loved it. We made all sorts of things that semester. We made a C-clamp out of raw steel and some aluminum and brass, and then we made a stainless steel hammer in that class. And those were good hands-on classes that kind of taught me the beginning of how to manufacture something, and then taught us how we would design for those types of manufacturing processes. And then there's also a lot of 3D modeling. So this is also all often called CAD, or computer aided design. It's where you do 3D modeling on a computer program. Lots of programs out there. I do a lot of that at work. Any engineering company does, and it doesn't so matter the modeling program you use, the CAD software you use. It's just kind of getting familiar with working in a 3D space, being able to make and design shapes, being able to kind of see dimensions, what dimensions look like, and define dimensions and tolerances when parts try to fit together, like what a tolerance is, how you assign tolerances. I remember those were two classes. I did one class that was a shop class, one class that was a 3D modeling CAD class, and I loved those as a freshman. And those are kind of what convinced me that, yeah, I wanted to keep going in the engineering field.
So this brings me to like, what does your typical day? I know like you have a specific thing, like your job task to do. What does your typical day look like? Are you behind a computer? I know you said you work with other engineers, like, or are you doing like hands-on type things?
Yeah, so sorry, I'll come back to this question. Going back to the previous question, I need to add some of the really common coursework for engineers is like physics. There's always physics classes involved in engineering. Chemistry is kind of a base layer. Almost every engineering degree I've heard of has some sort of chemistry requirement in college. And some more specific engineering type stuff would be like statics and dynamics, which is kind of the study of how things move, motion and the forces involved. Mm-hmm. And then materials, like material sciences, what are materials made of? How do materials interact with each other? And then strength of different materials. What are materials stronger than others? How can you make a material stronger? Things like that. So that's kind of more coursework that I went through as an engineer. So now coming back to your question about my daily routine, Yes, I'm at a computer a lot. It's not the most glamorous aspect of being an engineer. I literally sit in a cubicle. It's a little 6x6 desk. Not too glamorous, but it gets the job done. Um, have a nice dual monitor setup that helps. Um, Other day-to-day tasks, we do work with other engineers and other team members a lot. So a lot of interaction, you need to be able to communicate and work well with others. For example, we have to work with people from finance, people from supplier management. That's where we buy parts from other companies to use in our designs. We have to work with people who are experts in scheduling, so scheduling our program and our designs and when we need to have things done by. And then we have to work with our management, of course. So as an engineer, you got to be able to communicate with a lot of different people. So we often have, daily I'll have meetings with people from those different groups. I'll have meetings with other engineers where we need to discuss specific topics. Um, a lot of the computer work I do is just like any job, there's going to be things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you have to. And that, for me, that's paperwork in the engineering world. There's a lot of things as an engineer you gotta put your signature on and say yeah, this, myself as an engineer, I'm saying that yes, this meets our requirements. This satisfies any safety requirements. It satisfies what our customer wants. And as an engineer, I'm saying, yes, I approve this. And there's a lot of paperwork associated with that I do on a daily basis. But the funner stuff is as I mentioned, 3D modeling. I like that a lot, because as you design and 3D model something, you then put that on paper, you draft that, that's going to get made by somebody. Typically, as an engineer, you don't actually make it yourself. There are some groups, even in Boeing, there are some groups where the engineer actually can make a design and go out to a shop and make it himself. That's not very common. Those are smaller groups that are doing very specialized things. But for me as a design engineer, my job is to design it, and then I just help that design through the process of making a decision if it's going to be made by Boeing or if we're going to ask another company to make it. And then if whoever ends up making it, myself as the design engineer, I make sure they understand my design. And if they have any questions, they come ask me. And that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job, is being able to go to the shop and see something that I've designed getting made. I love that part because that is where I get to be a little bit more hands-on. When I was at Spudnik Equipment, it was metal parts. So I got to see raw steel come in one end of the building. They pulled my design down and they say, all right, we need to cut it, we need to bend it, weld it, and here it is. And let's paint it and put it on the harvester. And that was really cool right out of college. And for me now, it's a little bit more complex, but with wire harnesses, for example, I design the wire harness with the connectors and the wire types and the overbraids. And I go to a wire shop and they're like, all right, we're putting this together, we're pinning it out, we're testing it, it works great. And then I get to see it actually go to an aircraft or a rocket, and I get to see it put on the rocket or the aircraft, and then I see it fly. And that's super rewarding as a design engineer, even though my day job was just making sure everything was right up front on the computer and on the design, on the drawing, to make sure that everything after that in the process worked. And so that's kind of how I describe my daily job. So.
And and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this isn't true, but it does sound like it could be, because I've worked in a cubicle before doing different things, at a call center. I know how it's not always super fun, kind of in your own little world type thing. So, and especially doing probably the things you do, creating, coming up with plans or drafting, a lot of math and making sure, the safety side of things too, making sure, what you are drawing meets certain requirements. How do you take the stress of the job? How do you handle the stress that comes with your job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the key is to always take a deep breath and know that you're not by yourself. So all the pressure isn't on you as an individual, just on you. That's why we always work in teams as engineers. We always have people help check our work. So you know that if you accidentally, you're going to double check your own work, of course, all the time. But you kind of know that someone's got your back. You work in a team, someone is going to help you check your work. And if there is a chance that you miss something, someone else is right there to help check it and catch it. That is one of the ways that as an engineering company and as an engineer, that is how we make sure we're producing things that are high quality and safe, because that is a key. A lot of the things we do literally can impact someone's life. They literally can be life or death if something we did is wrong. And so we have standard daily practices where we check each other's work. All of our designs go through thorough review processes to make sure that they're sound. And so that is one thing that takes a lot of that stress off of me personally. I know that I work with a good team and we follow very detailed and specific steps to make sure our designs are high quality and safe. So
Cool. I know in your job you've um, done some traveling as well. For work. Does what is kind of maybe if a potential student's looking into mechanical engineering, kind of like what you do, what might be like an outlook for career options? I know you're with Boeing, but there's lots of other companies out there. Like, what are some different fields that they can get into?
oh man, there's so many different fields and companies and jobs and tasks that engineers are asked to do. For me, like I said, I kind of like aerospace and airplanes and rockets. So that's why I went to Boeing. Other companies in aerospace are Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, BAE, uh, General Atomics, I'm SpaceX, Blue Origin, big ones. So, and those are all doing things in the aerospace field, but I'll say in those big companies, they're also doing very, very small things in smaller groups. Other things engineers do all the time is, mining companies use a lot of engineers, construction companies use a ton of engineers, agriculture uses a ton of engineers. I'll even say like roller coaster design uses engineers. Disneyland, they have their own group called Imagineers that they employ a lot of engineers and do a lot of really cool things. So I'll just say, yeah, engineering is really broad, a lot of different fields. I know somebody who designs, I have a friend who designs forklifts. I have a friend from college who designs diesel engines for Cummins. I have a friend who decided they wanted to go into playground equipment design, kind of sounds specialized, not necessarily what you think of all the time, but there really are engineers designing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's just a few examples off the top of my head.
Okay. So thanks, Mike. Just kind of wrapping up, what are some like qualities or attributes one should have to be maybe as successful in the engineering field? I know you've talked about some, but what might be kind of some encompassing ones?
Yeah, a big one is curiosity. Just being curious about how things work, why things are the way they are around you, asking the question why a lot. I mean, that's a really good basic attribute that's good for engineering. It's something I do in my day job all the time. I ask, why is this way? Why does it need to be this way? What's potentially a different way to do something? I think that's a good attribute for anyone wanting to be an engineer is curiosity. Other ones would be determined. So you need to be able to be kind of resilient to any challenges. You need to be kind of strong in that way. You need to So innovation is kind of along the lines of curiosity. Um, I'll also say you need to be not afraid for failure. Think engineering, going through school, I failed a lot of tests. I did. I mean, but I was able to come back from those, to either took the test again or made it up elsewhere in my classes. You just come back from failures and you learn from them and you get better. What are some other attributes that would be good? I mentioned teamwork already. Good teamwork, being able to work with others, being able to communicate well with others. So yeah, those are a few attributes off the top of my head. So
Okay, yeah, awesome. I appreciate you, taking the time to meet with me and kind of giving us a little insight onto, what you do in the field of engineering. Um, is there, I'm probably for most fields, it doesn't necessarily matter, but is there like particular engineering programs you heard of that students should look for, or just any ordinary, any engineering degree? I guess, is there one better than another?
um, so for me, I would say the key is to just make sure any college engineering degree you would be looking into just needs to be ABET accredited. That's ABET accredited. Other than that, I would say you're going to have pros and cons with any engineering program you go to. For me, going to BYU Idaho, it was a very small engineering program, but I think it had a ton of benefits for being small. For example, the labs we did, the test instruments we had access to, I wasn't fighting hundreds of other students to be able to use that equipment and have access to those labs whenever I wanted. And so I felt like I got a lot more hands-on experience in my degree at a small school that helped me learn the material better than if I was at a larger school and had to kind of compete for those resources. Same goes for class sizes, competing with time with your professors. So I would say big schools have a lot of prestige and recognition, but I would say there's also a lot of benefit to smaller schools as well. So don't, I would tell students not to worry about going to a big school. If they do, that's great. Big schools are awesome, but I would say don't be afraid to go to a small school either. You can still get great education from smaller schools, smaller programs. The key is just to make sure that it's ABET accredited, because that's what employers kind of look for. But after that, it's like go to a school that kind of has what you want to do. If a school participates in programs like really popular one is an SAE Baja car or an SAE Formula One car. Schools will have these clubs in the engineering departments that you can participate in and get experience doing specific projects. I would say even in high school, if you find jobs that are kind of engineering related, like construction. So I worked construction kind of to put myself through college, and had to read some civil engineers blueprints for where to lay water lines. And I kind of used that experience on my resume to say, hey, I was a laborer, but I did work with a civil engineer that told us where to put water lines while I worked construction. Other projects students might look for is after school, if you can do robotics type activities and get experience with robotics. Legos. I mean, Legos are awesome. Building Legos and experimenting with Legos, things like that, are good experience to get to kind of get you thinking along the lines of what to do in college. Yeah, I'm kind of going on a tangent from your question here, but I would say just look for the accreditation at a university, and not necessarily just the prestige or the size of the university. So.
Okay, some great words of wisdom from Mr. Michael Jordan Brady himself. So just wrapping up, Mike, is there any other like final thoughts or anything that you want to share, or time is yours?
Yeah, I mean, Thank you. I've just got to say, anyone interested in STEM, like science, technology, engineering, math, I encourage you to pursue it. If it's something you like, go for it. Try it out, experiment with it, and see where it takes you. Um, as an employee of the Boeing company, I encourage you to go out to Boeing.com. There's a lot of resources and just examples out there of what to look into as a future engineer or a future person who works in science and technology. Um, don't be discouraged if you ever get discouraged about something. If something doesn't go your way, always keep doing what you want to do. Uh, I also think a lot of people might get discouraged about, if they can't do math, or if they don't want to go to all the schooling that an engineer goes to. If you're interested in science and technology and you don't want to go through all the schooling an engineer goes through, go to a tech school, go to a vocational school, learn a skill like machining, or learn a skill like welding, and go into the workforce doing that. I mentioned it already, but I've worked with some really awesome mechanics, some really awesome service technicians, some really awesome electricians. And I think those are awesome science and technology fields to go into as well. That if you love science and technology, but don't think you want to do all the schooling of engineering, maybe those are good alternatives. But yeah, for engineers, the sky's the limit. I studied mechanical engineering. I expected when I was done with my degree that they'd say, all right, you're a mechanical engineer, here's your job. And that wasn't the case. I mean, I still had to kind of decide with a mechanical engineering degree, what kind of company did I want to go work for? What kind of work did I want to go do? And so I'll encourage you to think about that first, and then kind of choose your degree path and what schooling you need to get there. And the sky's the limit, man. Just go for it. So.
Well, thanks again, Mike. I appreciate it. For taking your time to do so and speak with us. It was definitely beneficial and gave us a good understanding of your field and what it takes to become an engineer and to be successful. And yeah, appreciate it. And you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tim. Always good to talk to you. And if anybody wants my contact info, I'm always happy to talk to people. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. We'll see you.
Have a good one, man. See ya.
So there we have it. Another great episode. I'm very grateful that Michael took the time to meet with us. I know there's quite a few students who have talked about the career field of engineer. And talking to Mike, you can see there's different things you can do as an engineer. For him, it was a design engineer. He currently works for Boeing, like he talked about. I think he had a great point in saying, what do you actually want to do? Think about that. What do you actually want to do in your life? And kind of take that answer and then go with it. What do you want to do? What is it? And find out how you can do it. Another great episode, number 6 coming up. It is the United States Army. Talk to you later.